So before I get into the various arts that make up Tang Soo Do, I want to make certain that people understand that Tang Soo Do is actually a hard-soft style. It's not hard, it's not soft. What does that mean? Well, what that means, hard, and I'm going to get into it, hard techniques are techniques that meet force with force. Soft techniques are techniques that redirect energy. So a hard technique meets force with force, either with a linear head-on force blocking the technique or a diagonal cutting strike. A kickboxer's low kick aimed to break the attacker's leg. A karate block aimed to break or halt the attacker's arm. Hard techniques can be used in offenses, defenses, and counter-offenses. Soft technique. The goal of soft technique is deflecting the attacker's force to their disadvantage, with the defender exerting minimal force and requiring minimal strength. With a soft technique, the defender uses the attacker's force and momentum against them by leading the attacker in the direction to where the defender will be advantageously positioned, what's known as tai sabaki, or body movement. The defender leads. The way you can understand this is, the reason I'm making these videos is a lot of people have been talking horse shit about the, what the hell's that show? Cobra Kai. And how Miyagi said, best defense no be there. So a lot of that has to do with tai sabaki, moving the body to put you at an advantage. Essentially, be there when you use the Arimi Nagi type entering techniques that are so prevalent in Tang Soo Do, and for example, Aikido and Tang Soo Do, you move yourself out of the way and redirect the attacker's energy. In Tang Soo Do, it's basically a blend of hard and soft at the same time, but you're redirecting the attacker in Tang Soo Do with a hard technique after using the soft technique to redirect, and you may follow up with a soft technique utilizing a joint lock or something like that. So soft technique usually is applied when the attacker is off balance, thus the defender achieves the maximum efficiency. It's also used to put an attacker off balance. In fencing, it's a parry. In classical fencing, other techniques appear. Bare knuckle boxing and pugilism, it's a parry. With martial arts styles such as Tai Yen, Ti Dao, Chu Un Shu Pei, the soft style, or Pae, is also in keeping with the Taoist philosophy. The idea that the technique can also be applied in mental terms, as well as physical. Soft techniques can be used in offense, but are more likely to appear in defense and counter-offense. Much like hard techniques, they are affected by footwork. This is where footwork becomes very important, and skeletal alignment. Soft techniques are also characterized as being circular in nature and considered internal, using qi or ki. So qi in Chinese, ki in Japanese and Korean. And I'm going to move on right now. So, of course, the first martial art that was the root of Tang Soo Do is, of course, Okinawan Shotokan Karate, which was created by Gichin Funakoshi. So, let's get to characteristics. We already covered much of this by covering Gichin Funakoshi and Gigo Funakoshi. Shotokan training is usually divided into three parts: Kihan, Kata, and Kumite. Techniques in Kihan, which are basic techniques in Kata, are characterized by deep, low stances, just like in Tang Soo Do, deep, low stances that provide stability and enable power movements and strengthen the legs. They also add flexibility in the legs. Shotokan is regarded as a dynamic martial art as it develops anaerobic, powerful techniques, as well as developing speed. Initially, strength and power are demonstrated, so you focus on strength and power first, just like in Tang Soo Do. Strength and power are developed first, and flowing motion, and instead of slower or more flowing motions. However, what is needed to be understood in the practice of techniques, a lot of Tang Soo Do instructors will have you develop strength and power first, but as far as techniques are concerned, we do all this at once. So you're starting, so when you do Il Su Sik and that sort of thing, you're doing the strength and power techniques, but you're also doing the soft hard techniques, as I explained earlier. So so Gichin Funakoshi laid out the 20 precepts of karate, which form the foundations of the art before some of his students established the Japan Karate Association, or JKA. Within these 20 principles, based heavily on Bushido, which is the Japanese way of the warrior, and Zen, lies the philosophy of Shotokan. The principles allude to the notions of humility, respect, compassion, patience, and both inward and outward calmness. It was Funakoshi's belief that through karate practice and observation of these 20 principles, the karateka, which means practitioner of karate, would improve their person, meaning improve who they were as a person. The Dojo-kun lists 5 philosophical rules for training. Seek perfection of character, be faithful, endeavor to excel, respect others, and refrain from violent behavior. These rules are called the 5 maxims of karate. The dojo-kun is usually posted on the wall of the dojo, and some Shotokan clubs recite the dojo-kun at the beginning or end of each class, similar to the student creed in Tang Soo Do. Common terms, many terms. Okay, so we got, I'm going to go over terms later when I start covering when I cover Japanese and Korean terms. Rank is used in karate to indicate experience, expertise, and to a lesser degree seniority. Seniority is very important in Tang Soo Do and other Korean martial arts. Keep that in mind. Most Shotokan schools use the Kaiyu Dan system, or what in Korean we call the Gup Dan system. So the Kaiyu is the color belt and the Dan is the black belt. Generally speaking, there is generally a level of Dan for every rank of Kaiyu. Okay, Kihun, basics, is the practice of basic techniques in Shotokan. It includes stances, blocks, punches, kicks, various displacements, and their combinations, as well as the practice of Kihun, kata, okay, kata. This is something that you need to understand, though. Kata is often described as a sequence. So what you have to understand is, in Tang Soo Do, we practice all this at once. You're sparring, you're doing Il Su Sik, you're doing everything all at once, from white belt through all ranks of black belt. There's no levels of this stuff, although different techniques. Obviously, if you start Tang Soo Do, you're not going to start off doing a jump spinning back axe kick or some crap like that. So that's the one thing that you have to keep in mind, is the techniques are going to vary, but you're going to be doing everything from basic techniques to hyungs, or kata, what's called kata in Japanese, to all levels of free fighting, or kumite. It's all going to be thrown at you at once, white belt through all ranks of black belt. So Taikian is a system of martial arts that is supposed to be fundamental to Tang Soo Do. Some of it is, some of it isn't. A lot of what Taikian has in it that's in Tang Soo Do is also in Shotokan. But the history of the techniques of Taikian, I'm not going to go over the history because I've gone over that in the past. Taikian utilizes a wide variety of techniques, including kicks, hands, knee, elbow strikes, pressure point attacks, throws, joint locks, headbutts, and grappling. Okay, the whole body is used in each movement, although Taikian primarily utilizes kicking, punching, and arm strikes thrown from a mobile stance, and does not provide a framework for ground fighting. It does incorporate a variety of different throws, takedowns, and grappling techniques to complement its striking focus. All this is in Tang Soo Do. However, all this is also in Shotokan, especially Shotokan prior to it being changed on the mainland of Japan. The main purpose of Taikian is to catch the opponent off timing by using the whole weight of the body and catching the opponent's attack off balance. What I've seen from Taikian is it looks very similar to me to Capoeira. The movements of Taikian are fluid, with the practitioners constantly moving. One of its most striking characteristics is the motion called Gungsil, Pumpki footwork. So it focuses on a triangular footwork. I encourage people to see this on their own. The arm swinging, I find this to be absolutely hilarious, because in Tang Soo Do, we always keep our hands up high to block our face, either with a traditional, karate type block or with a boxing type block, and to be able to guard our torso, again, with a traditional kind of block or a boxing type block, and to throw other kinds of blocks, and of course to throw offensive punches. Kick techniques, their kick techniques don't really look all that interesting. Hand techniques, though renowned for a variety of its kicks, since the ancient ages, Taikian uses a lot of hand techniques. They target all areas of the body and use every part of the arm, forearm, elbow, hand edge, back of the hand, fingertips, techniques. So this is all in Tang Soo Do too. However, it's also in Shotokan Karate. Throwing and tripping, this is interesting to me, although all this is also in Shotokan. But the throwing and tripping I find very interesting in Taikian. Joint locks, again, all also in Tang Soo Do, however, all also in Shotokan Karate. Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. If you remember, in the Mudaquan system, Master Huang Qi studied Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. So what are the characteristics of Northern Shaolin Kung Fu? Northern Shaolin Kung Fu is one of the most prominent traditional northern styles of Chinese martial arts. The northern style of Kung Fu generally emphasizes long-range techniques, quick advances and retreats, wide stances, kicking and leaping techniques, whirling circular blocks, quickness, agility, and aggressive attacks, all of which are in Tang Soo Do. The 72 Consummate Skills of Shaolin is a book that I would highly recommend everybody that's involved in martial arts reads. However, what I would like to point out, these are training techniques that will help you develop extreme martial power, okay? Extreme ability to perform extreme martial arts techniques. What I would caution people is that if you're a moron, don't read this book. Some of these techniques are dangerous. Some of them are deadly to train in, okay? Some of these techniques are very dangerous to practice and could result in severe injury or death. So if you're an idiot, don't read this book and don't implement any of the training in this book. However, if you feel as though you might have an average to above average degree of common sense, give it a shot. But at your own risk. I am not encouraging people to do this and not expect injury, or to do this and hold me responsible for any idiotic thing they do. A lot of these techniques are going to hurt you. These are mostly body hardening techniques, and they can result, as I said, some of these techniques can result in you dying because they're so unsafe. Others can result in severe injury, especially if you're an idiot. So be careful. And if you are an idiot, please don't read this book, and please don't implement any of the training practices of the 72 Consummate Skills of Shaolin. Most people don't ever bring up the fact that one of the core aspects of American Tang Soo Do is Defendu. Defendu was created by William Fairbairn. Okay, he was the one that created the special operations training for the British and American forces during World War II. So let's see about this, the development. So, based on his training and knowledge in boxing, wrestling, savate, jiu-jitsu, judo. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, how this works is most Tang Soo Do practitioners that brought Tang Soo Do back to the States that were Americans. Brought it back because they had taken Tang Soo Do, Shotokan, Shorin Ryu, Goju Ryu, whatever. They took whatever overseas while they were deployed in primarily Japan, Okinawa, Korea or Vietnam, and they brought that back to the States, and they mixed it with what they learned in the Marine Corps, the Army, etc. So what did they learn in the Marine Corps, the Army, etc.? They learned Defendu. They learned Combato. So based on his training and knowledge in boxing, wrestling, savate, jiu-jitsu, and street fighting, this is Fairbairn, he was involved during his police work in Shanghai. Fairbairn began to develop his own system of hand-to-hand combat, initially referring to it as Defendu. It was designed to be simple to learn and provide effective results. Fairbairn published his book Defendu in 1926, illustrating this, and then later reprinted as Scientific Self-Defense, illustrating this method. And it is here that the term Defendu first appeared. This confused early readers of the book who assumed that the techniques within were based mainly in Eastern martial arts that Fairbairn had learned. Thus, in an attempt to highlight the originality of Fairbairn's material, the term did not appear in the 1931 edition of the book. Fairbairn was called upon by the British to help train Allied troops in World War II. Fairbairn and others expanded on the system to create the close-quarter combat system. Okay, that was then taught to the troops. This system was built on Defendu, but modified for military application. So it was built on Defendu, but modified for military applications. The original Defendu was oriented towards self-defense and restraint, while the close-quarter combat system concentrated on rapid disabling of an opponent with potentially lethal force. This is primarily when we would teach rape prevention. This is what we would teach women because it is very worthwhile for a smaller, weaker person to do this. Okay, and when I get into line fighting, I'm going to show you the evolution of this. Which is primarily also what we taught to women. Okay, and there's a reason why. So, Fairbairn published, as taught to the British commandos and the U.S. Armed Forces, Fairbairn's CQC system is also described in Rex Applegate's book, Kill or Be Killed. Fairbairn published several more books on the subject of self-defense, all of which refer to Defendu only in relation to the earlier book. The start of the Second World War saw Allied forces, blah, blah, blah. They found one such edge in Fairbairn's system. Immediately, Fairbairn was commissioned in the British Commandos and ordered to teach a lethal version of his system at the Commando School in Scotland. It was at this top-secret Scottish location that Colonel Rex Applegate of the U.S. Army studied under Fairbairn, though through Colonel Applegate and other instructors such as Colonel Anthony Biddle. These highly effective skills were taught to U.S. troops, including U.S. Marines and Rangers, as well as the OSS, which is the predecessor of the CIA, and later to the FBI and the CIA as the foundation of their basic training. Once the British Commando School in Scotland was able to produce its own Fairbairn Sykes qualified instructors, both men were transferred, Fairbairn to North America and Sykes to SOE, where he trained special agents for behind-the-lines duties. Fairbairn's special assignments in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, was to teach his system to Allied Special Forces at the most highly classified training operation of World War II, Camp X. Agents were trained in depth to dispose of their enemy quickly and quietly with brutal effectiveness. Following his instruction at Camp X, Fairbairn was rejoined by Rex Applegate to form the United States Camp B, now known as Camp David. This introduction of the Fairbairn fighting system at Camp X, in conjunction with the input from many highly skilled instructors with various backgrounds and fighting skills, was the beginning of the evolution of Defendu as close quarters battle or unarmed combat training progressed through this period. It was added to and refined utilizing Western fighting principles. Okay, the basic principles. Defendu encourages the practitioner to end a confrontation as quickly as possible using ungentlemanly means by rapidly attacking vital areas of the body, such as the groin, the throat, the side of the neck, the shin, the eyes, and the ears, by using only several, not a gazillion, several pragmatic and powerful strikes. These strikes are taught as a method and not as disconnected, isolated strikes found in traditional martial arts. Done properly, these strikes will chain together at each other, just like boxing. Defendo was also designed to be able to be mastered in mere days. Due to the extremely compressed curriculum, students are also taught to always take initiative, always take the initiative, employ artifice, and remain at offense, as no block or parry were found in this system. No block or parry were found in this system. It's all attack, 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 attack. So line fighting, my instructor more or less infused this into our system of martial arts. Line fighting stands for linear infighting neural override engagement. Again, linear infighting neural override engagement. What does that mean? Well, when you're in a fight, you have to understand, most Marines, so this was taught to the Marines, most Marines are not professional fighters. So when you get all jazzed up, when you get all amped up in combat or in a fight or something, you'll start shaking, you'll start getting rapid heart rate, you'll start breathing heavy, you'll start sweating, you'll start acting differently. So what these techniques, these very simplistic, aggressive, and deadly techniques do is they encourage, or they don't encourage, they allow for a system of combat that will quickly and easily dispatch an opponent. And before I start with this, I want to make sure that people understand I am not encouraging violence. This is for historical and education purposes only. The system was designed to be executed within specific and stringent combat-oriented conditions, okay? These are very good reasons to teach this to women that are in fear, okay? Women that consider their lives at risk because of certain situations that may arise due to the current, what's going on. All techniques must not be vision dominant. Techniques may be executed effectively in low light conditions or other impaired visibility conditions, meaning you have to be able to execute these techniques if you can't see. Extreme mental and physical fatigue, meaning if you are tired, if you are worn out, if you are dehydrated, if you are starving, if you're half dead, if you're injured, you have to be able to perform these techniques. Usable by Marine and soldier while wearing full combat gear, which can be heavy. Proper and can restrict movement. Proper execution of the techniques must cause death of the opponent. One more time. Proper execution of the techniques must cause the death of the opponent. They must be gender neutral and able to be used against either gender. A lot of traditional Oriental martial arts and a lot of the older combat systems such as Defendu or Combado, etc., they make heavy use of the testicles as a target, and so does this system. But you have to understand that if a woman attacks you, you have to be able to attack that woman with the same ferocity and the same effectiveness as you would a man. There are certain techniques that don't work against women that work against men. These parameters were viewed as the most likely conditions that a combat marine or soldier would face in close-range combat, since most close combat engagements were likely to occur at night or under reduced visibility while the marine or soldier was fatigued and wearing their combat load, and when facing asymmetrical odds such as a numerically superior force. These requirements meant that the flamboyant, so all these crazy techniques, these wackadoodle kicks and backflips and all this crap, gotten rid of. The techniques like classic judo hip throws were allowed due to entanglement. The system's techniques were designed to be easily learned and retained through repetition. The requirement and demands that the system be drilled repeatedly and constantly, drilled repeatedly and constantly, drilled repeatedly and constantly, and revisited, just like in a karate class, led to some criticism since the primary users, military including special operations operators, personnel often had enormous demands on their time, and as a consequence often lacked the ability to maintain high degrees of proficiency in the techniques. Line was adopted by the Marine Corps in 1989 at a course content review board at Quantico, Virginia. Okay, that's not as Army Special Forces later adopted it in 98. The Air Force adopted it later. Units trained. These are the various units trained. Blah blah blah. And I'm going to move on. So I'm going to finish up here with American Tang Soo Do. American Tang Soo Do is a hybrid martial art formed in 1966 by Chuck Norris. I want to be sure that people understand this. While Chuck Norris used the term American Tang Soo Do, other people use the term American Tang Soo Do, other people use the term American Karate, other people use the term Korean Karate, all of which are pretty much the same thing. Chuck Norris called what he did American Tang Soo Do. Other people also call what they do American Tang Soo Do. Different things have different things in them. Like I said, my system of Tang Soo Do, the self-defense focuses mainly on military-style combat-type self-defense. It does not play as big a role in the Judo or the Shitu Ryu Karate or the Shotokan Karate or things like that. However, it's important to understand that other systems of American Tang Soo Do do. So, American Tang Soo Do evolved from Tang Soo Do Muda Kwan. Keep in mind, the Muda Kwan school. And it combines elements from several different fighting systems. Between 1958 and 1961, Chuck Norris was stationed in South Korea at Osan Air Base as a member of the military police in the United States Air Force. During this time, he trained in various martial arts styles under some of the most respected instructors in the world. These instructors included Tang Soo Do Muda Kwan with Shin Jae Chol, and Judo under an instructor named Mr. An. Upon his return to the United States as a Tang Soo Do black belt, Norris continued his martial arts training with Shotokan karate masters Sotomu Oshima and Hidetaka Nashiyama, Shito Ryu karate instructor Fumio Dimura, he's definitely world famous, American Kempo karate founder Ed Parker, and judo expert Gene LaBelle. Gene LaBelle also is very popular in the pro wrestling and mixed martial arts circuits. What resulted from this training is what would become known as, it's one of many American Tang Soo Dos, but it is American Tang Soo Do. Norris would continue to make changes to his art by adding techniques from Hapkido, which he learned via his friendship with Hapkido and Taekwondo master Jun Chang, whom he sold one of his schools to in the early 1970s. In the late 70s, Norris would train with the late Al Thomas in Thomas's Budo Jiu-Jitsu system. National Tang Soo Do Congress, blah, blah, blah. American Tang Soo Do notable figures. Chuck Norris, Dick Douglas. Okay, so Aaron Norris, of course. Pat Johnson is a very interesting person. You know what, I'm going to go over, because everybody's blabbing about Cobra Kai. Maybe I'll go over who Pat Johnson is right now. So, Pat Johnson is a 9th degree black belt in the art of American Tang Soo Do. He is the president of the National Tang Soo Do Congress, which was originally created by Chuck Norris in 1973. Johnson is famous for martial arts choreography in the Karate Kid series, in which he also starred as the All Valley Karate Tournament head referee, and has been involved in many films as choreographer and actor, including Enter the Dragon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mortal Kombat, Green Street Hooligans, and recently Punisher Warzone. He is the 1995 Black Belt Magazine Instructor of the Year. Born in 1939, he's 83. Niagara, nationality American, style Tang Soo Do. Teachers Chuck Norris, Kang Do Hee, ranked 9th Dan. Notable students Steve McQueen, Bob Barker, Osmond, the Osmond family, William Zapka. Biography, blah, 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 not important, but I figured I'd go over him right now, and that will be the, oh, you know what? That was going to be the end. I have to move on with the and you know what, I'll do another video on the terminologies. That's going to take a whole video in and of itself to do the terminologies. So that's not the end of these basic videos, because I have to do the terminologies in Japanese and Korean still.